This podcast is made possible in part by the generous contribution of our Smart Insiders Plus members. If you're not a member, join in now. Just go to smartrecovery.org/insiders.
Welcome to the Smart Recovery Podcast. I'm Luke Frazier. Today on the program, we're going to visit with SMART Facilitator Steve Kind and talk about his work with SMART and his personal story. Steve, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Luke. Pleasure to be here.
Let's start with more of your personal background and the things that have gone on in your life to bring you where you are today. Give me a little capsule of your background and your story.
Well, I've been in and out of treatment several times, starting back in high school, believe it or not. I'm 58 years old, so that's been a long journey. Of course, my initial treatment stay was 12-step. And it worked.
What? Excuse me. What do you say? Of course, just because that's all you were exposed to, or
I have never heard of any other programs. That you got to realize that was back in the early '80s as well. So there wasn't a whole lot of other game in town.
Okay.
And I did look, and that was what was available was 12-step. As a matter of fact, that treatment center is no longer in existence. It has been torn down since I've been there. I wasn't responsible for that.
I was just going to say, Steve, do you have anything to do with the demise of this treatment center?
I might have helped, but I'm not real sure. But no, I've been in and out of treatment. I've actually been to treatment 4 times, and it was not until this last time, which was a result of me getting a second DUI within 2 years. The state of Minnesota does not smile kindly on 2 and 2.
Yeah, what, that's interesting though. Excuse me, the DUIs from years ago, and I'm your same age. They didn't seem as severely dealt with, as today. They don't mess around with DUIs today. And maybe that's a good thing, it is a good thing for safety purposes, but it gets people to realize that they may have an issue maybe a little bit faster.
Yeah. No, I tell you, I've been pulled over many times intoxicated and had police let me go when I was younger. Just basically said, go home, not drive me home, not anything like that, but just go home. Nowadays, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Harshly twice.
So the state of Minnesota decided that you needed some help.
Yep. Well, I hadn't been sentenced yet, but I did know that the steps to go were to, at the very least, look earnest and get yourself into a program. Now, I actually was earnest. At this point, I had almost lost everything. My wife was threatening to leave me. And she truly is the love of my life. She's always been that. And I was scared to death staring down the prospect of not having her in my life anymore. And I had actually, prior to my second DUI, I had a discussion with her that I was going to stop drinking. Of course, talk and action.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're all good about making promises and then promptly breaking them.
Absolutely. But I knew that the only way for this to work now, to kind of put a fine point on this, I was a Christian very, very early in my childhood and into my adult years. I was very Christian. I was defensively Christian. I was dyed in the wool. And since then, I have walked away from that. I am an atheist. I don't wear it on my sleeve. There is no sacrifices. The stereotypes that people put with that moniker are not part of my life. I've had people ask me about the tenets of atheism. There are no tenets of atheism. It's just a lack of a belief in a higher power. So I decided the only way, because I was steeped in the 12 steps, I knew that I had to be honest with my counselor and let her know I've been through this. I've been through it with faith and without, and it did not work for me. So I was looking for something else. Now, my counselor, very forward thinking, this was a 12-step program that she was running. And she had heard of SMART Recovery. She had no idea what it was all about. She just knew that it was an alternative pathway. And so she asked me to take a look at it. And I did. And I came back to her excited that I found something that I could wrap my head around and that made a lot of sense to me. I actually, Jonathan Breton had a video on YouTube, and I remember looking at the cost benefit analysis, and he had something about naming your addiction, giving it a personality, and I was just flabbergasted. I thought, this is exactly what I'm looking for.
Excuse me, I'm interesting you mentioned we just initiated a Jonathan von Breton speaker series that Smart Recovery is holding, and our inaugural speaker was Dr. Nora Volkoff, from the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And in fact, a quick program note, you can see the entire presentation from Dr. Volkoff on our YouTube channel if you missed the presentation. So there you saw someone. How did you come across his video on YouTube?
I just looked up Smart Recovery on YouTube, and he was the first thing that I saw at that time. So, he was my first introduction to Smart.
And what year was this? What year was this, Steve? And
this would have been 2018.
Okay.
In June of 2018. I don't keep track of my sobriety date. I know I'm a little over 3.5 years sober now, but I do remember my arrest date. So I know it was in June of 2018.
The court doesn't let you forget those.
No. I have many, many documents referring to that date. So anyways, my counselor, she was so open that she not only let me, instead of using the 12 steps, she allowed me to bring these lessons into our group and tell them to the group and kind of get the feedback from the group as we were going. And I now get invited back about once a quarter to talk to the people in her group about Smart Recovery. So that's been a wonderful transformation.
Yeah, that's really forward thinking of a counselor who had heard of Smart Recovery, but sounds like didn't know much of anything about it, but gave you the assignment of finding out more about it and bringing it back to the group. I mean, that's exactly the kind of open-mindedness that we hope a lot of professionals have towards Smart Recovery. When they hear of it, investigate it or have someone investigate it. And now look at you, you're being called upon to be a resource back at the treatment center.
Absolutely. And I tell you, I always enjoy it. And I always start it the same way that I started. I do the cost benefit analysis. I always love that very first question. You talk about the benefits of using, and everybody is blank. They either don't want to admit anything, or they what do you mean the benefits? Well, I always write the 4-letter word buzz. How about the buzz? Wasn't that something that you enjoyed about it? And then then it just starts to flow.
Sure.
So yeah, that's I really enjoy working with the group.
So when you first came back and started talking to others about Smart Recovery, at that time, were you a facilitator? You were making more presentations rather than facilitating groups, or am I incorrect? How did becoming a trained facilitator fit into that, approximately into that timeline?
Well, when I was going to this treatment, it was outpatient treatment. So the weekends were free, and I looked for meetings on smartrecovery.org. And the closest thing that was available to me, now I live in southern Minnesota, the closest thing available was up in Minneapolis. It's 70 miles away. So I went to a couple of Saturday meetings, just drove up and checked them out. And again, just absolutely loved all the tools and things. And the facilitator was fantastic. And I asked him, I said, what are the prospects of getting something like this in Mankato? He said, well, let me ask you this. What are the prospects of getting something in Mankato?
Right back at you.
Right back at me. He says, you have the ability to take the training and start your own group. And that week I went and registered to become a facilitator. So I took the training, and of course sat in a room by myself for quite some time. Mankato is a very, very AA oriented town.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I put articles in the newspaper. I did everything that I could, and I could not get a single person to come in that room for, I would say, about 6 weeks before I had my first live victim in the room. So,
Well, but you were there, and you decided to stick it out and persevere, and maybe you did a cost benefit analysis on having meetings. You decided that there was some benefit, right? I mean,
well,
before we go any further, hey, let's give a plug to that Minneapolis facilitator who really helped you out so much. What, do you remember their name?
his first name is Aiden. I can never remember his last name,
Okay.
but I quote him all the time. He's had some good quotable quotes.
Yeah, and there's a one of the other beauties of smart recovery is that peer support and learning from each other and someone encouraging you. And so there you sat in is it Mankato?
Mankato.
Mankato. Okay, so there you are waiting for someone to show up, waiting for someone's to show up at your meeting. What was it like when the first person or persons walked in and said, "Hey, is this a smart recovery meeting?"
Well, it was great. I was kind of flabbergasted. I was expecting to be there alone that day. I had my Miles Davis on my laptop. I was relaxed. I was just, waiting, and I was not expecting it. But him and I sat down. Now, I should say one of the people from my treatment did come down a couple of times. His name is Andrew, and Andrew came in just to kind of sit with me. He didn't really need to be in SMART, and honestly, he was one of these odd things where through legal circumstances he needed to be in the group, but he really wasn't what I would consider to be somebody who was really struggling with addiction. But he actually also came up with the money for the first ad in the newspaper. So he's been a big supporter from the beginning. But that was just a couple of meetings, and he wasn't there for a meeting. He was just there to support me. So that was wonderful. But after that first person came in, they were so excited by the time we got done with that meeting that started some word of mouth around the area.
Okay.
Word of mouth is something I'm not unfamiliar with. I have a big mouth, and I was telling everybody about it. But unfortunately, I had bought the brochures through the Smart Recovery website and put the meeting on there, and I brought them to halfway houses, and I brought one of the people who showed up at my meeting was in a halfway house and said that he had retrieved the brochure from a dumpster.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I realized I was kind of fighting an uphill battle to try and get SMART in this community. Fast forward though, we have gotten now to the point where we have 4 meetings a week here in Mankato. We have 3 facilitators. We have another on the way. And we're growing exponentially. It's continuing to grow. It's been fantastic.
That's Steve Kind. He's a smart recovery facilitator in Mankato, Minnesota. He's responsible for starting the first meeting there and getting the momentum going. And Steve, that's just such a great story, because others who may be out there trying to start meetings in their rural communities, can look to you as kind of an inspiration for if you keep at it and you keep, plugging away, then you can succeed. And I like when you talk about word of mouth and outreach, because there's something to be said for larger scale and advertisement or something like that. But really, when someone hears from another person, hey, you ought to check this out. Is that what happened when you're talking about word of mouth?
Yeah. And it kind of snowballed. I was kind of stunned. The first week I had, it was actually 2 people that first time that showed up. That other person did not come back. I think they were just more 12-step convinced. But the next week, nobody showed up again, and I thought, I lost them. But the following week, it became 3 people, and then it was 4 people, and then it was 6 people, it finally grew to the point where we were having we had to add extra chairs to our meeting room, which was
there's a good signal of success.
And then the pandemic hit.
Uh,
And yeah, we had to go all online, and we lost a lot of people. They just didn't want to do the online thing.
Mm-hmm.
But now we've actually replaced those with many people. We've got a much wider reach, and our word of mouth has spread. And so we get people from all over the place now.
Mm-hmm. And I think you all also mentioned, or I heard that you started a friends and family meeting. So expanding in a different area besides just the individuals or other kinds of groups.
Yeah, that's in the works. We're actually looking at starting that next month.
Okay. Why would you want to do that? I mean, why not just stick with the quote regular meetings?
Well, I've had some people reach out because they know that I am the SMART Facilitator in town, and they either know people with some addiction problems and would like to see something so that they can understand what they're going through. Basically, I've just been asked by several people, and I kept kicking the can down the road. I really wasn't interested in that part of it, but the more that I kept getting responses to that, I thought, well, okay, I'm going to have to do it now. After taking the friends and family training, I've realized this is something I should have done a long time ago, because there is really not a lot around. I mean, AA's got their Al-Anon, and we have nothing in Mankato to help those that are with somebody who is struggling.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked about some of your personal story in a brief way and bringing you to the smart recovery world, the universe there. Let's go back to that. I know you've written a book about your experiences. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, my book is called Inspirational, Dissatisfaction. I wish I could be the originator of the title, but I stole it from Zig Ziglar. My background is in sales and marketing, so I've listened to a lot of Zig Ziglar. And I went to a convention one day, and that was one thing that he talked about, is inspirational dissatisfaction. He said nothing gets you more inspired than wanting to not have more of what you don't like.
So you're stuck. Maybe you're stuck in kind of what you don't like, and you just can't picture having more of that.
Right. My title came from basically two areas. First of all, the dissatisfaction with my life itself. I was spinning out of control. Let me just kind of go back to where this book kind of starts. Is excuse me. I started, I was conned into going out and trimming marijuana out in the hills of Northern California.
Now, wait a minute, Steve. Conned, or is that, are you relieving yourself of responsibility for doing that?
I will take all the responsibility. I looked at the adventure, and of course, I'm a fan of the Flintstones. I looked at that get rich quick scheme and dove right in. But the con part of it was what I was told I would be making, as opposed to.
Oh, okay. There's the con.
There's the con. But no, it was an adventure. It was fantastic, and it was horrible, and it was a lot of things. Living on the side of a mountain in California with no potable water and no electricity, and law enforcement helicopters hovering overhead every morning. I mean, it was both surreal, fun, and a nightmare. So both. That would be three things. But I went from that to finding out that I was going to lose my shirt on this whole thing. So I made some connections out there and came up with a plan to try and get as much money as I could out of this debacle and go back out to California with these connections, buy things at a cheaper price, bring it back to Minnesota, and get rid of it. And that's kind of where the alcohol went from something that I occasionally did, but I never did a little bit. When I did drink, I drank. But the stresses that I was under running this back and forth became problematic, and I started drinking very, very dangerous amounts, and really kind of losing myself down that rabbit hole. So the book kind of takes a turn into where that brought me, and how I was kind of putting my family in danger. I was putting myself in danger. I was meticulous when I first started doing this run back and forth, in that I would, there's always a convention in Reno. So I would go to a website, download all the information from the convention, create laminates, do everything so it looked like I was at this convention. So once I came over the border from California, it looked like, and I would enter in through Reno, it looked like I was at a convention in California. And I worked for a marketing company back then that put your logo on everything, hats, shirts, and all that. So I put, my back seat was loaded with baseball hats and shirts and mugs and everything else. So I did actually get pulled over at one point, and my ruse held, which was fantastic. It was actually a sheriff with a dog in his vehicle, and he never got the dog out of the vehicle, thank goodness. So,
well, you talk about planning and meticulous. Sometimes I've heard with people with substance use disorders, we're very smart. We have good planning skills at times, but what you described though was that spiral, that downward spiral that ended up, really taking you out of commission there. Is that kind of what happened after this all this stuff was being done?
Yeah. And not only did I miscalculate what I was going to make by doing these runs, the danger level was so high that the stress of not making a lot of money, coupled with the stress of, if I get pulled over, I'm gone. I would be sitting in a Nevada jail or whatever for a long period of time.
Well, there's your, you started out talking about cost benefit analysis. I mean, if you started looking, if you got rid of some of those cognitive distortions, that SMART talks about, and really put it on the CBT kind of frame and looked at all those tools, it just wasn't worth it. I mean, and when was the final straw? Was there a final straw, or you said this is just not what I want to do?
Well, I finally got to the point where I had to get out from what I was doing. I lost one of my best friends out there, who got basically the only assumption we can really make is that he's in a shallow grave out there because of the people that he was dealing with. And put it this way, there's not a lot of survivors from the book that are still alive out there. It's a brutal business. And I just decided it was time to pull the plug. I was not making the kind of money that I was hoping for. And my drinking, like I said, had just spiraled out of control. It still didn't put the light on above my head to stop the drinking. But the second DUI was the thing that kind of was the catalyst, that and the fact that my wife had enough.
Yeah. Well, as you said, there was a strong value of yours was that relationship, was your wife. I mean, you speak very lovingly of her and of that relationship. So staring that in the face of possibly losing it, I mean, it really sounds like it shook you to the core.
It did, without a doubt. And yeah, the inspirational dissatisfaction comes from that, but it also came from not the dissatisfaction of where I had gone with my recovery. I was not getting anywhere with the 12 steps. I was not getting anywhere trying to trying to take care of myself without any assistance whatsoever, just kind of winging it, I'm just gonna taper off, or I'm just going to stop for a month. And A, I don't think I ever made it 30 days, but B, when I did go back to drinking, it was never a drink or two. It was right back to where I was. And So the second piece of inspirational dissatisfaction was the fact that I was inspired to find something that would work for me. And that's where SMART came in.
I like that idea of inspirational dissatisfaction, because usually you would think of inspiration as, you may be going along and maybe a little bit of a rut, but not entirely dissatisfied, but then something inspires you. But you're saying you have to take a strong look at what is something that is causing dissatisfaction in your life and go from that basis. Is that really where you're coming from and the title of the book is coming from?
That is absolutely right. Spot on, Luke. That is having something in your life that is not working is one thing. Having something in your life that is working against you inspires you to find something to turn that around. And that's where I was.
Got it. Well, this has been a fascinating story. I think, where can folks pick up the book? Is there, can you order it online or?
Yep, you can order it on Amazon. You can order it on Barnes and Noble. Pretty much any place you can get books. Going into the store, they can generally order it for you. But it's mostly online.
Well, that sounds good. I mean, it's always great to hear someone's personal story, to hear, the journey that they overcame things. And yours sounds like has some real danger and excitement in a dramatic sense. Of how you went through. Anything else, Steve, you want to talk about being a SMART recovery facilitator, helping the program to grow in Mankato and other surrounding areas? Anything else you want to tell our listeners about your journey?
Well, just anybody out there that has thought about getting the facilitators training, I can't stress it enough. It has changed my life. It has my spirituality has been basically my ability to help others, and it is completely changed my life. If you're thinking about it, get off the fence. This is it's a wonderful program, and you will do a lot of good. And bring a book on those first few meetings, because you may be sitting for a little while. And I have a suggestion on what book to bring, but I'll leave that up to you.
Gotcha. That's Steve Kind. He's a SMART recovery facilitator in Mankato, Minnesota. He's helped the program develop there, and he's gotten some real value out of it himself, but also, I'm sure, have provided value to those who are attending the meetings and who now know you and perhaps are inspired. I would say probably are inspired by you yourself.
I hope so.
Thanks so much for joining us, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Luke.
You've been listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. This is Luke Frazier. Until next time on the podcast, stay healthy and stay connected.